I married a stranger who lied to me before we even met. When his wagon pulled up to that ranch and I saw 7 children lined up on that porch, 7, not 3. I knew I'd been deceived. But when the youngest one looked at me with those hollow eyes and whispered, "Mama," that's when everything changed. Because 3 months later, men came with papers to take them all away. And I realized I'd die before I let that happen. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and stay until the end of this incredible true story. Comment below which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Clara Whitmore remembered that because Tuesdays were when Mrs. Henderson came to complain about something. This particular Tuesday, she'd been relentless. 26 years old and still alone. It's unnatural, Miss Whitmore. Clara had smiled, the same tight smile she'd worn for 8 years. Perhaps God has different plans. God helps those who help themselves, dear. After the woman left, Clara locked the schoolhouse and walked 3 blocks to her room above Pritchard's General Store. Pennsylvania winter, 1883. Snow everywhere. Her breath came out in white clouds. Up the narrow stairs, into the small room bed chair, dresser wash basin. A window overlooking Main Street. 3 years she'd lived there. Never felt like home. More like a waiting room for a train that never came. Something was under her door. A newspaper, folded yellowed. The Frontier Herald, 6 weeks old. She didn't subscribe to Western papers. Never been west of Pittsburgh. She almost threw it away. Then she saw the notice on the back page, circled in pencil. Seeking correspondence. Widower rancher in Wyoming Territory seeks woman of gentle disposition for marriage. Must be willing to relocate and help raise children. Reply to Benjamin Parker, Cedar Falls. Wyoming. Clara stared at it, then laughed. One bitter sound in her empty room. Mail-order brides, desperate women, desperate men, trading promises, marrying strangers. People exactly like her. She set the paper down, ate her dinner bread and cheese, read by candlelight until her eyes hurt. But when she lay down, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Help raise children. She'd always wanted children. A house full of laughter, tiny hands reaching for hers. But the years passed. The men married younger women, prettier women, women with dowries. And Clara became the spinster schoolteacher above the general store. 3 days later, she wrote the letter. Just curiosity, she told herself. Just to see what kind of man advertised for a wife in newspapers. She wrote honestly. About teaching, about books, about being 26 and unmarried with no family, parents dead, no siblings. Plain but healthy. Practical but kind. She didn't tell him she was desperate. Didn't tell him she felt her life slipping through her fingers like water. She mailed it before she could change her mind. 6 weeks later, he wrote back. Clara's hands shook opening the envelope. Neat handwriting. 2 pages. Dear Miss Whitmore, your letter brought light into my home after a very dark time. I must be honest with you, I am not a man given to flowery words. I am 34 years old. I've lived in Wyoming Territory for 12 years. I own a ranch that provides modest but stable living. My wife Margaret died 14 months ago. The loss has been difficult for myself and my children. I have 3 children. Samuel is 15, Ruth is 12, and Elizabeth is 9. They are good children, hardworking and kind, but they need a mother's care. I can provide you with a home security and respect. I cannot promise you romance, but I can promise you honesty and a family that needs you. If you are still interested, I would be honored to continue this conversation. Respectfully, Benjamin Parker. Clara read it 3 times, then wrote back immediately. 6 months of letters followed. Benjamin wrote about his ranch, the land, raising children alone. He wrote about Margaret with tenderness and grief, never hiding his pain. About Wyoming's beauty mountains, endless sky standing in a place where the world seemed bigger than any problem. Clara wrote about her life, her dreams, the students she taught, books she loved, the feeling that life was passing her by. Their letters grew longer, more intimate. Benjamin told her about waking at dawn to milk cows, teaching Samuel ranch accounts, Ruth's skill with baking, Elizabeth's love of drawing. Clara told him about students' faces lighting up when they understood something, the satisfaction of teaching a child to read. In his 8th letter, Benjamin wrote something that made Clara's breath catch. I find myself thinking of you often, Clara. I wonder what you would think of this place. I wonder if you would find beauty here or just hardship. I wonder if a woman like you, educated, cultured kind, could be happy somewhere this wild. But mostly I wonder if you might consider making this your home. Clara wrote back one word. Yes. By spring they'd agreed to marry. Benjamin sent money for a train ticket. A simple proposal. Come to Cedar Falls. Marry me. Build a life here. Clara gave notice at school. Sold everything. Mrs. Henderson was scandalized. Marrying a man you've never met in Wyoming, this is madness. Clara smiled. First real smile in years. Maybe, but it's my madness. The train took 5 days. Clara watched the landscape change, familiar towns giving way to endless prairie, then mountains, then something wild and open that made her chest ache. When the train pulled into Cedar Falls, she stepped onto the platform with her trunk and her courage and nothing else. He was waiting. Benjamin Parker. Tall, weathered, kind eyes, calloused hands. Not conventionally handsome, but solid, real. Miss Whitmore? Mr. Parker. 2 strangers who'd poured their hearts into letters, suddenly shy. You came, he said. I came. I'm glad. Silence stretched between them. Benjamin cleared his throat. The Reverend is waiting at the church, if you're ready. Clara looked at this man who'd promised honesty and family and home. Thought about the empty room above the store. Mrs. Henderson's pitying looks, all those years of waiting. I'm ready. They married an hour later in a small wooden church, smelling of pine and wax. Clara wore dark blue wool. Benjamin wore a clean shirt, his hair damp from washing. The ceremony was brief. The Reverend spoke about commitment and faith. Benjamin's voice was steady with his vows. Clara's hands shook. I do. Just like that. Mrs. Benjamin Parker. They climbed into his wagon. Spring air cool, but not cold. Sky so blue it hurt to look at. Leaving town, Clara tried to memorize everything. Distant mountains. Vast openness. The feeling of moving toward something instead of standing still. How far is the ranch? 40 minutes. Benjamin's hands were tight on the reins. Nervous. Distracted. Your letters said the children are eager to meet me. Benjamin's jaw tightened. Clara, I need to tell you something. Her stomach dropped. What? I wasn't completely honest in my letters. The wagon hit a rut. Clara gripped the seat. What do you mean? About the children. He wouldn't look at her. There aren't 3. Her blood ran cold. What? There are 7. The world tilted. 7. I should have told you. I wanted to, but I was afraid you wouldn't come. Clara's voice went sharp. So you lied? Yes. He looked at her, anguish in his eyes. I lied, and I'm sorry. But Clara, please let me explain before you ask me to turn this wagon around. Explain. Ice. Benjamin took a breath. Samuel, Ruth, and Elizabeth, they're mine by blood. Margaret's and mine. But Timothy, Michael, Matthew, and Mary, they're not. Then whose are they? Orphans. Children we took in. Timothy's mother was our neighbor widow who died in childbirth. No one else to take him. Michael and Matthew are twins. Their parents died of fever 3 miles from our ranch. Margaret found them alone in the wagon. And Mary—" His voice cracked. "Mary's mother left her on our doorstep 18 months ago. Couldn't have been more than a few months old." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "You've been raising 7 children alone since your wife died." "Margaret and I always believed that if you have room in your heart and home, you share it. These children had nowhere else. We couldn't turn them away. But you could lie to me about them. I was wrong." His voice broke. "I know I was wrong. But Clara, if I'd told you the truth, would you have come?" Clara opened her mouth to say yes. The lie caught in her throat. She didn't know. 7 children. Not the modest family she'd imagined. 7 children, most of them strangers to his blood, all orphaned and damaged and needing more than one woman could give. "Why didn't you tell me?" whispered. "Because I'm drowning." Benjamin's voice was raw. "I'm trying to run a ranch and raise 7 children, and I can't do both. Samuel is becoming a man, and I barely know him. Ruth is 12, playing mother since Margaret died. Elizabeth cries herself to sleep every night. The little ones, they need more than I can give. They need someone who can be present, who can care. So you tricked me. I thought I'd give you a chance to see them before deciding." He pulled the wagon to a stop. "We're here." Clara looked up. The ranch house sat in a clearing backed by mountains, larger than expected, clearly expanded over years. Barn, stable, fenced pastures, beautiful in a wild way. And on the porch, lined up like soldiers, 7 children. They stood by height: tall teenage boy, girl about 12, another slightly smaller, twin boys maybe 7, small child perhaps 5, toddler held by the oldest girl. 7 faces, 7 pairs of eyes watching. 7 children who'd lost everything and been given a chance by people who believed love could be chosen, not just born. Clara felt Benjamin tense beside her. "Say something, please." She couldn't speak, mind racing. The train ticket paid with his money, not refundable. The room above the store no longer hers. Mrs. Henderson's scandalized face, 26 years old, alone, running out of chances. But mostly 7 children on a porch waiting to see if they were about to lose another person they needed. "Drive to the house," she said finally. Benjamin drove up. The children didn't move, just watched. Solemn, silent. Clara climbed down before he could help. Walked to the porch steps. Looked up at 7 faces staring down. The oldest boy, Samuel, had his arms crossed, defensive. The 12-year-old Ruth held the toddler protectively. The others looked frightened. "Hello." Her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm Clara. Your father and I were just married." Silence. Clara looked at Benjamin, his face pale, desperate. She looked back at the children, at Ruth trying to be brave, at the twins pressed together, at the small boy sucking his thumb, at the baby staring with huge dark eyes. Clara made her decision. "I imagine this is confusing for you. Your father probably told you I was coming but didn't explain well. Men aren't always good at that." Samuel's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Here's what I know. You've all been through something terrible. Lost people you loved. Probably learned not to trust adults because adults make promises then leave." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "I can't promise perfection. I've never been a mother. Never lived on a ranch. Don't know the first thing about Wyoming or cattle or any of this. But I can promise I'm here, and I don't leave when things get hard." The toddler suddenly reached toward Clara. "Mama." The word hung in the air. Ruth's face crumpled. "Mary, no, she's not." But Clara was already climbing the steps. She reached for the child. Mary came to her without hesitation. Tiny arms wrapped around Clara's neck. "Hello, Mary." The little girl buried her face in Clara's shoulder. "Mama?" Clara looked at Benjamin over Mary's head. His eyes were wet. 7, she said. You should have told me there were 7. I know. No more lies. Ever. Never. Clara took a breath. Mary was warm in her arms. The other 6 children watched with something like hope. All right then. She turned to face them all. Let's go meet our children. She walked into the house. Samuel stepped back to let her pass. Ruth wiped her eyes. The twins stared. Little Timothy stopped sucking his thumb. Inside the house was larger than it looked. Kitchen to the left, living area to the right, stairs going up, clean but cluttered. The chaos of 7 children and 1 overwhelmed man. Clara set Mary down. The little girl clung to her skirt. All right. Clara turned to face them all. I need to know your names. Your real names, not just what I've heard in letters. The oldest boy stepped forward. Samuel, I'm 15. I help Pa run the ranch. Ruth, I'm 12. The girl's voice was quiet. I do the cooking and mending. Elizabeth, 9 years old, thin, anxious. I help Ruth. The twins spoke together. Michael. Matthew. We're 7. The small boy whispered, Timothy, I'm 5. And this is Mary. Ruth picked up the toddler. She's almost 2. Clara nodded. Good. Now I need you to understand something. I didn't know there were 7 of you until half an hour ago. Your father lied to me about that. The children's eyes went wide. They looked at Benjamin, who'd come in behind them. He was wrong to lie, Clara continued. But I understand why he did it. He was desperate. You needed help. He thought I wouldn't come if I knew the truth. She paused. He was probably right. Samuel's jaw set, ready to be angry, ready to defend. But I'm here now, Clara said. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to learn your names, really learn them. I'm going to figure out what each of you needs, what you're afraid of, what makes you happy, and I'm going to do my best to be what you need. Why? Samuel's voice was hard. You don't know us. We're not your children. No, Clara agreed. You're not. You're not yet, but your father just made me his wife. That makes you my responsibility, and I take my responsibilities seriously. You could leave, Samuel said. You could get back on that train tomorrow. I could. Clara met his eyes. But I won't. How do we know that? Clara thought about it. Then she took off her wedding ring, the simple gold band Benjamin had placed on her finger an hour ago. She held it up so they could all see. Your father gave me this today. It means I made a promise. Not just to him, to all of you. I don't break promises. She put the ring back on. Silence filled the room. Then Timothy, the 5-year-old, walked over to Clara. He looked up at her with enormous eyes. Are you going to be our mama now? Clara's chest tightened. She knelt down so she was at his level. I'm going to try to be, if you'll let me. Timothy studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. He walked back to stand with the twins. Ruth was crying now, silent tears running down her face. I've been trying so hard. Since Mama died, I've been trying to keep everyone together. But I'm so tired. Clara stood and walked to her. You're 12 years old. You shouldn't have to be tired like this. But someone has to. And now someone will. Clara put her hands on Ruth's shoulders. You can just be 12 again. I'll handle the rest. Ruth's face crumpled. She threw her arms around Clara and sobbed. Clara held her. Over Ruth's head, she saw the other children watching, saw the desperate hope in their faces, saw Benjamin standing in the doorway, looking like he might collapse with relief. 7 children. She'd come west expecting 3. Instead, she'd gotten 7 broken hearts that needed mending. All right, Clara said when Ruth's sobs quieted. Here's what we're going to do. First, someone is going to show me where things are in this kitchen. Then we're going to make dinner together. Then we're going to sit down and eat like a family. And tomorrow, We're going to start figuring out how to make this work." "That's it." Samuel's voice was skeptical. "Just like that. Just like that. You're not going to make us call you Mama." "No," Clara said. "You can call me whatever feels right. Mama, Clara, Ma'am, Mrs. Parker, whatever you want." "What if we don't want to call you anything?" Clara met his challenging stare. "Then you don't have to. I'm not here to replace your mother, Samuel. I'm just here to help." Something shifted in Samuel's face. The hard shell cracked just a little. "Kitchen's this way," he said quietly. That first night was chaos. Dinner was simple beans and bread, and whatever Ruth had already prepared. The children were awkward around her, testing, watching, waiting to see if she'd break. Clara didn't break. She asked questions, learned that Michael loved horses and Matthew loved books, that Elizabeth drew pictures of birds, that Timothy was afraid of the dark, that Mary said "Mama" to every woman she saw because she didn't remember having one. She learned that Samuel had been doing a man's work since he was 13, that Ruth had learned to cook by watching her mother die slowly of fever, that the twins still had nightmares about their parents' wagon. After dinner, Clara helped Ruth clean up while Benjamin took the younger children upstairs. Samuel stayed in the kitchen pretending to read, but really watching her. "You don't have to stay," he said finally. "If you want to leave tomorrow, I'll help you pack." Clara dried a plate. "Do you want me to leave?" "Doesn't matter what I want. It matters to me." Samuel looked at her, really looked. "No one ever asks us what we want." "Then I'll start asking." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Elizabeth cries at night, every night since Ma died. Ruth tries to comfort her, but nothing helps. I'll talk to her. Timothy wets the bed. He's ashamed. I'll help him." The twins don't talk about what happened to them. They just pretend everything is fine. "I'll give them time." "And Mary," Samuel's voice cracked. "Mary doesn't understand why everyone keeps leaving her." Clara set down the plate. "Samuel, look at me." He looked. "I'm not leaving." "You say that now." "I'm not leaving," Clara repeated. "Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year. I came here to build a life. That's what I'm going to do." Samuel's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why should I believe you?" "Because," Clara said quietly, "I have nowhere else to go. This is my home now. You're my family now, and I protect my family." Samuel wiped his eyes roughly. "Pa lied to you. Aren't you angry?" "Furious," Clara admitted. "But I understand why he did it. He loves you all. He was desperate. People do desperate things when they're trying to protect the people they love. Ma used to say that. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. "I miss her." "I know." Clara reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and squeezed his hand. "I can't replace her, but I can be here, if you'll let me." Samuel didn't pull away. He just stood there, this boy, trying to be a man, holding the hand of a woman he'd just met. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay." That night, Clara lay in bed beside Benjamin, her husband of 6 hours, and stared at the ceiling. The room was dark, silent except for breathing. "Thank you," Benjamin whispered. "Don't thank me yet. For staying, for not leaving." Clara turned to look at him. "You lied to me." "I know. If you ever lie to me again about anything, I will leave. I don't care how hard it is or how much the children need me. I won't stay with a man I can't trust." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I need you to understand that this only works if we're honest with each other. Those children have been through enough. They don't need more broken promises." "No more lies," Benjamin said. "Ever. I swear it." Clara studied his face in the darkness, saw the truth there, the desperate sincerity. "All right. Clara." His voice was rough with emotion. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. 7 children, a ranch, all of this. If you regret coming, I don't regret it." "You don't—" Clara thought about Ruth's tears, Timothy's enormous eyes, Mary's tiny arms around her neck, Samuel's broken voice saying, "I miss her." "No," she said. "I don't regret it. I'm terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I don't regret it." Benjamin let out a breath. "They already love you. They don't even know me. They will, and when they do—" He paused. "You're going to be everything they need." Clara didn't answer. She just lay there in the dark, listening to her husband breathe, thinking about 7 children sleeping in rooms down the hall. 7 children who needed more than she knew how to give. But she'd try. God help her, she'd try. Because 3 months from now, men would come to take them away. And Clara would learn exactly how fierce a mother's love could be. But she didn't know that yet. All she knew was that she'd come west looking for a family. And she'd found one. The first week passed in a blur of motion and noise and constant adjustment. Clara woke before dawn that first morning, her body still confused by the unfamiliar bed and the warmth of another person beside her. Benjamin was already gone. She could hear him moving around downstairs, the clank of the stove, the scrape of a chair. She dressed quickly in the dark and made her way down. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the early gray light filtering through the windows. Benjamin stood at the stove attempting to make coffee. "Let me," Clara said. He turned startled. "You don't have to—" "I know. Let me anyway." She took over the coffee, then started on breakfast. Eggs, bacon, bread toasted on the stove. Simple food, but more than Benjamin had been managing alone. As she worked, children began appearing. First Samuel, then Ruth, then the others in descending order like stairs. They ate in near silence, everyone watching, Clara waiting. "Samuel," Clara said, breaking the quiet. "Your father says you handle the ranch accounts." The boy looked up surprised to be addressed. "Yes, ma'am." "I'd like you to teach me. Not today, but soon. I should understand how things work here." Something shifted in Samuel's expression. Respect, maybe. "All right. Ruth, after breakfast, show me the pantry. I need to know what we have, what we need." "Yes, ma'am." "Elizabeth, I noticed some of the younger children's clothes need mending. Can you help me with that this afternoon?" Elizabeth's eyes widened. "I'm not very good at sewing." "Neither am I. We'll learn together." A small smile crossed the girl's face. "Okay." Clara continued down the line, giving each child a task, a purpose. Michael would help his father with the horses. Matthew would organize the books she'd seen scattered around the house. Timothy would help set the table for meals. And Mary would stay close to Clara, learning by watching. "Everyone has a job," Clara said. "Everyone contributes. That's how families work." After breakfast, Benjamin left with Samuel and Michael for the day's ranch work. The house suddenly felt enormous and quiet, with just Clara and the remaining 5 children. Ruth showed her the pantry, sparse but adequate. They made lists. What they had. What they needed. How to stretch supplies through the spring. "Mama used to make bread twice a week," Ruth said, then stopped. "I mean, Mrs. Parker used to—" "It's all right," Clara said gently. "You can talk about her. I want you to talk about her." Ruth's eyes filled. "It feels wrong, like I'm being disloyal to you." "Ruth, look at me." Clara waited until the girl met her eyes. "Your mother loved you. She raised you. She gave you everything she had. Nothing I do will ever change that or replace that. You're allowed to miss her. You're allowed to talk about her. You're allowed to love her memory and still let me help you. Do you understand?" Ruth nodded, tears spilling over. She used to sing when she made bread. Old hymns. Her voice was terrible, but she didn't care. Clara smiled. "Tell me more." And Ruth did. As they worked through the pantry, through the kitchen, through the endless tasks of running a household, Ruth talked. About her mother's laugh, her stubbornness, the way she'd dance with Benjamin in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching, the way she'd tuck each child in at night no matter how tired she was. The other children drifted in and out listening, adding their own memories. Elizabeth remembered how their mother would draw pictures with them. The twins remembered her reading to them every night. Timothy remembered her holding him during thunderstorms. Clara listened to all of it, learned the woman whose place she was trying to fill, learned that Margaret Parker had been kind and fierce and endlessly patient, learned that these children hadn't just lost a mother, they'd lost the center of their world. "She sounds wonderful," Clara said when the stories finally wound down. "She was," Ruth whispered. "And now she's gone, and we have you instead, and I feel terrible because you're being so kind, and I keep wishing that she was here instead of me." Ruth's face crumpled with guilt. "It's all right," Clara said. "I wish she was here too. Not instead of me, but with you, still alive, still holding you through storms and singing while she made bread. You should have your mother Ruth. All of you should. I'm sorry that you don't." Ruth threw her arms around Clara and sobbed. The other children crowded close. Even Timothy climbed onto Clara's lap. And Clara held them all, this collection of broken hearts, and let them grieve. When Benjamin came in for lunch, he found them all in the kitchen together. Clara teaching Elizabeth a simple stitch while Ruth rolled dough. The twins reading quietly at the table, Timothy playing with wooden blocks, and Mary asleep in a basket near the stove. He stopped in the doorway just watching. Clara looked up and caught his expression. Wonder, relief, something that might have been love starting to form. "Wash up," she said. "Food's almost ready." That became their rhythm. Benjamin and Samuel and Michael worked the ranch. Clara and the others kept the house running. But it wasn't a division so much as a partnership, everyone contributing what they could. Samuel taught Clara the ranch accounts in the evenings, his patience surprising her. Ruth showed her how Margaret had organized the household, then slowly started letting Clara make changes. Elizabeth began drawing pictures for Clara, leaving them on her pillow, like gifts. The twins started talking more, their silence gradually breaking. Timothy stopped wetting the bed after Clara told him a story about how she'd done the same thing as a child. And Mary followed Clara everywhere, her tiny hand always reaching for Clara's skirt. By the end of the second week, something had shifted. The house felt less like a collection of strangers and more like a family finding its footing. Then Sunday came. "We go to church," Benjamin said over breakfast. "Every Sunday. The whole family." Clara nodded. Of course. Getting 7 children ready for church was chaos. Ruth couldn't find her good dress. Matthew had mud on his shoes. Timothy refused to let Clara comb his hair. Mary screamed when Ruth tried to change her. But eventually they were loaded into the wagon, all 9 of them crowded together heading into Cedar Falls. The church was small wooden perched at the edge of town. People were already gathering when they arrived. And Clara felt every eye turned toward them. The whispers started immediately. "That's her, the mail-order bride. Married him without meeting him first. 7 children. Poor thing doesn't know what she's gotten into. Give her a month, she'll leave." Clara lifted her chin and took Benjamin's arm. Together they walked into the church, children filing behind them. They sat in a pew near the back, not enough room for all 9 in one row, so Samuel and Michael sat behind them. Clara held Mary on her lap. Timothy pressed against her side. She could feel people staring. The service was standard. Hymns, scripture, a sermon about faith and perseverance. But Clara barely heard it. She was too aware of the eyes on her back, the whispers, the judgment. After the service, a woman approached, middle-aged, well-dressed, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Margaret's sister, Judith." Clara's heart sank. "It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" Judith's eyes were cold. "My sister has been dead barely a year, and Benjamin has already replaced her. With a stranger." "Judith." Benjamin's voice was warning. "No, Benjamin. Someone needs to say it." Judith looked at the children, then back at Clara. These children need a mother, not some desperate woman who answered an advertisement. Clara felt Timothy's hand tighten in hers, saw Ruth's face go pale, saw Samuel's jaw set in anger. She took a breath. You're right. Judith blinked, surprised. They do need a mother, Clara continued quietly. They need someone who will love them and protect them and put their needs first. They need someone who will be there when they're scared and celebrate when they're happy and teach them how to be good people. They need all of that. She paused. And I'm going to do my best to give it to them. You're not Margaret. No, I'm not. I could never be. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Judith's lip curled. We'll see about that. She turned and walked away. The ride home was silent. Clara could feel the children's tension, their worry. When they arrived at the ranch, Samuel helped unhitch the horses without being asked. Ruth took the younger children inside. Benjamin stood by the wagon, his hands clenched. I'm sorry, he said. Judith has been difficult since Margaret died. She loved her sister, that's natural. She thinks I betrayed Margaret by marrying you. Did you? Clara met his eyes. No. Benjamin's voice was firm. Margaret would have wanted this. She would have wanted the children cared for. She would have wanted me to move forward. Are you trying to convince me or yourself? Benjamin flinched. Both, maybe. Clara sighed. I don't expect everyone to accept me immediately. I understand that I'm an outsider. But those children in there, they're starting to trust me. And I won't let anyone, not even family, make them feel guilty for that. Agreed. They walked toward the house together. At the door, Benjamin caught her arm. Thank you. For what? For standing up to Judith. For defending yourself. For... He struggled for words. For being exactly what this family needs. Clara's throat tightened. I'm not sure I am. You are, Benjamin said. I see it. The children see it. Maybe one day you'll see it too. Inside, Ruth was starting dinner. Elizabeth was setting the table. The twins were arguing over a book. Timothy was building with his blocks. Mary was toddling around, getting into everything. Normal chaos. Family chaos. Clara rolled up her sleeves and joined in. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. Spring deepened into early summer. The ranch work intensified, planting fence, mending cattle management. Clara learned the rhythm of it. Wake before dawn. Feed the family. Send the men to work. Manage the house. Teach the children. Make dinner. Clean up. Collapse into bed. Repeat. It was exhausting. But it was also satisfying in a way Clara had never experienced. Every day she saw progress. Samuel smiled more. Ruth laughed occasionally. Elizabeth drew pictures without being prompted. The twins' nightmares decreased. Timothy's confidence grew. And Mary started saying, Mama, just to Clara now, not to every woman she saw. One evening, Clara was tucking Timothy into bed when he looked up at her with those enormous eyes. Are you going to stay forever? He asked. That's the plan. Promise. Clara thought about all the broken promises these children had endured, all the people who'd left them. I promise, she said. Cross my heart. Timothy smiled and closed his eyes. Clara made her way downstairs. Benjamin was at the table going over accounts. Samuel was reading. Ruth was mending. The other children were already asleep. Clara, Benjamin said without looking up. Did you order supplies from Hendrix's store? Yes, why? Just checking the accounts. He made a note. You're managing the household budget better than I ever did. Ruth's been teaching me. Ruth looked up surprised and pleased. Well, you're both doing an excellent job, Benjamin said. He set down his pen. Samuel, can you check on the horses before bed? Yes, sir. After Samuel left, Benjamin turned to Clara. There's something I need to tell you. Her stomach dropped at his tone. What is it? I received a letter today from Margaret's brother, Harold Winters. I didn't know Margaret had a brother. They weren't close. He lives back east, runs textile mills. He and Margaret had a falling out years ago over a lot of things. What does he want? Benjamin pulled out a letter and handed it to Clara. She read it, her blood running cold. Benjamin, I was grieved to learn of my sister's death. Even more grieved to learn that you have remarried so quickly and to a stranger. I have concerns about the welfare of my nieces and nephews, as well as the other children you've taken in. I will be traveling to Wyoming in the coming weeks to assess the situation. I trust you will welcome me as family. Harold Winters. Clara looked up. What does this mean? It means trouble, Benjamin said heavily. Harold didn't care about Margaret when she was alive, didn't visit, didn't write. But now that she's dead, suddenly he's concerned about the children. What does he really want? I don't know. But Harold Winters doesn't do anything without a reason, usually a profitable reason. Ruth had gone very still. Pa, is he going to try to take us away? No. Benjamin's voice was firm. No one is taking you anywhere. But Clara saw the worry in his eyes, and she felt the first stirring of real fear. 2 weeks later, Harold Winters arrived. Clara was in the garden with Elizabeth and Mary when she heard the horses. She looked up to see a fine carriage pulling up to the house completely out of place in the rough Wyoming landscape. A man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed. Cold eyes that swept over the ranch with obvious disdain. Benjamin, he called. Come greet your brother-in-law. Benjamin emerged from the barn, Samuel close behind. Clara could see the tension in every line of Benjamin's body. Harold. My dear brother. Harold's smile was thin. And this must be the new wife. The mail-order bride. The words were meant to sting. Clara felt them land. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked forward, Elizabeth and Mary trailing behind. I'm Clara Parker. You're welcome in our home, Mr. Winters. How gracious. Harold's eyes flicked to the children. And these are Margaret's girls. My, how they've grown, though they look rather unkempt. Elizabeth shrank back. They're children, Clara said evenly. They've been playing. Harold turned back to Benjamin. I'd like to see the house and meet all the children. I've come a long way. That evening was tense. Harold sat at their dinner table watching everything. Judging everything. He asked pointed questions about the children's education, their health, their daily routines. He frowned at the crowded table, raised his eyebrows at the simple food, made comments about the roughness of frontier life. 7 children, he said, shaking his head. That's quite a burden for one woman, especially a woman with no experience. Clara is doing wonderfully, Benjamin said tightly. Is she? These children, half of them aren't even yours by blood, taking in strays like common. They're not strays. Samuel's voice cut through the room. They're our family. Harold turned his cold gaze on the boy. You're Samuel 15, correct, old enough to understand reality. These orphans, they're not related to you. They're a drain on your family's resources, on your inheritance. I don't care about inheritance, Samuel said. I care about my brothers and sisters, half-brothers and sisters. Family is family, Ruth said quietly. She was holding Mary, who was starting to fuss. Blood doesn't matter. Harold smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Ah, the idealism of youth. But you see, my dear, blood does matter, legally, financially, in every way that counts. Clara felt ice forming in her stomach. Why are you here, Mr. Winters? To assess the situation as I said in my letter. And what have you assessed? Harold leaned back in his chair. That 7 children is too many for one man and one inexperienced woman to properly care for. That these orphans would be better served in proper institutions, and that my sister's actual children deserve better than this rough frontier life. The room went silent. Then Timothy started crying. No. No, I don't want to go to an institution. Papa, don't let him take me. Michael and Matthew grabbed each other's hands. Elizabeth's face went white. Ruth clutched Mary tighter. Samuel stood up, his chair scraping back. You're not taking anyone, Benjamin said, his voice deadly quiet. I haven't said I'm taking anyone, Harold replied smoothly. Yet. But I am concerned, and I believe the territorial authorities might share my concerns if properly informed. Get out of my house. Benjamin. Get out. Harold stood slowly. Very well. I'm staying at the hotel in town. I'll be here for another week observing, making notes, talking to people about your situation. He looked at Clara. About both of you. He walked to the door, then turned back. Margaret deserved better than this, and so do her children. The door closed behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then all the children started talking at once, crying, demanding explanations. Clara held up her hand. Everyone stop. Her voice was calm, though her heart was racing. Timothy, Michael, Matthew, no one is sending you to an institution. Elizabeth, Ruth, you're not going anywhere either. Samuel, sit down before you put your fist through the wall. Slowly, the chaos subsided. He can't take us, can he? Elizabeth whispered. Benjamin and Clara exchanged looks. No, Benjamin said firmly. But Clara heard the uncertainty beneath it. Because the truth was, they didn't know what Harold Winters could do. They didn't know what power he might have, what legal strings he might pull, what lies he might tell. All they knew was that their family, this fragile, cobbled-together family that was just beginning to heal, was under threat. And they would have to fight to keep it. After the children were finally in bed, after an hour of reassurances and tears and promises, Clara and Benjamin sat at the kitchen table in exhausted silence. He wants them, Clara said finally. Not because he cares, but because why? What does he gain? Labor, Benjamin said bitterly. Harold owns textile mills. He employs children, young children, works them 12-14 hours a day for pennies. Clara's hands clenched. That's what he wants, to take orphans and turn them into workers. And to punish me for marrying you, for replacing his sister so quickly, for being happy when she's dead. Are you happy? Benjamin looked at her, really looked at her. Yes. For the first time in over a year, I'm happy. The children are healing. The house feels like a home again. And you, his voice caught. You've given us all something to hope for. Clara's eyes burned. Then we fight. How? I don't know yet. But Harold Winters is not taking these children. Not one of them. Benjamin reached across the table and took her hand. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Clara said, a ghost of a smile. But you're stuck with me now. That night, lying in bed, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Timothy's terrified face, Ruth's desperation, the twins clinging to each other, Mary's confusion. 7 children who had already lost so much. She wouldn't let them lose more. Beside her, Benjamin's breathing was uneven, not asleep either. Clara, yes. If this goes badly, if Harold finds a way to take them, he won't. But if he does? Clara rolled over to face him in the darkness. He won't. Because I won't let him. Do you understand me, Benjamin? I came west looking for a family. I found one, and I will burn down heaven and earth before I let anyone tear it apart. Benjamin's hand found hers in the dark. I believe you. Good. Outside, the wind picked up. Clara listened to it howl around the house, around this home full of children who needed protection. Children who had chosen to trust her. Children who had started calling her Mama. Harold Winters wanted to take them away. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The school teacher from Pennsylvania was gone. In her place was something fiercer, something that would protect its young no matter the cost. In her place was a mother, and God help anyone who tried to hurt her children. The next morning, Clara woke with purpose burning in her chest. Harold Winters wanted to observe them. Fine. She'd give him something to observe. She was already dressed and in the kitchen when Benjamin came down. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Coffee's ready," she said. "And I need you to take me into town today." "Clara, we're not hiding. We're not acting like we have something to be ashamed of. If Harold is going to talk to people about us, then I'm going to talk to them first." Benjamin stared at her. "You want to go to town?" "Now. Right after breakfast. I want to meet the people of Cedar Falls. I want them to see me. See us. See that we're a real family, not whatever story Harold is planning to tell." "That's..." Benjamin paused. "That's actually smart." "I was a teacher for 8 years," Clara said. "I know how to handle difficult people. And I know that the truth is always a better weapon than lies." She called the children down for breakfast. They came slowly, faces drawn with worry. Even Mary seemed subdued, clinging to Ruth's nightgown. Clara set food on the table: eggs, bacon, fresh bread she'd baked before dawn. "Eat," she said. "All of you. We have a busy day ahead." "What are we doing?" Samuel asked. "Going to town. All of us. We're going to show Cedar Falls exactly who the Parker family is." Ruth's eyes widened. "But Mr. Winters?" "Mr. Winters can watch all he wants. We have nothing to hide." Clara looked at each child in turn. "You are my children. This is our family, and we're going to walk into town with our heads held high. Do you understand?" Slowly they nodded. An hour later they were loaded into the wagon, all 9 of them dressed in their Sunday best despite it being a Tuesday. Clara had brushed and braided the girls' hair, made sure the boys' faces were clean and their shirts tucked in. Mary sat on her lap, playing with the buttons on Clara's dress. Harold Winters was standing outside the hotel when they rolled past. Clara met his eyes and smiled. A challenge. Their first stop was the general store. Clara walked in with Benjamin at her side, children filing behind them. The store owner, Mr. Pritchard, looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Parker, I wasn't expecting—" "I need to place a large order," Clara said pleasantly. "We're running low on several items. Ruth, do you have the list?" Ruth handed it over, her hand shaking slightly. Clara squeezed her shoulder. As Mr. Pritchard reviewed the list, other customers began gathering, watching, whispering. Clara ignored them and continued discussing supplies, asking the children's opinions, treating the whole thing like a normal family outing. "My goodness," an older woman said loudly to her companion. 7 children! How does she manage?" Clara turned to face her. "The same way any mother manages, with patience and love and very little sleep." The woman blinked, surprised to be addressed directly. "Oh, well, I suppose... I'm Clara Parker," Clara continued, extending her hand. "And you are Mrs. Thornton." The woman shook Clara's hand hesitantly. "It's lovely to meet you. These are my children, Samuel, Ruth Elizabeth, Michael, Matthew Timothy, and Mary. Children, say hello to Mrs. Thornton." A chorus of polite greetings followed. Mrs. Thornton's expression softened slightly at their obvious good manners. "They're very well behaved," she admitted. "They're wonderful," Clara agreed. "I'm very blessed." More people entered the store. Clara made a point to introduce herself and the children to each one, to answer questions about how they were settling in, to show that she wasn't some desperate mail-order bride who'd been tricked. She was a woman who'd chosen this life and was making it work. Samuel stood close to her, his protective instincts sharp. Ruth kept the younger children in line. Elizabeth helped Timothy reach something on a high shelf. Michael and Matthew stayed together, but were polite when spoken to. And Mary charmed everyone by waving and saying hi to anyone who looked at her. They were a family. Anyone could see that. When they left the store an hour later, Clara felt the first stirring of hope. The people of Cedar Falls weren't hostile, they were curious. And curiosity she could work with. Their next stop was the church. Reverend Matthews was working in his small office when Clara knocked. "Mrs. Parker, what a surprise." I hope I'm not interrupting, Reverend. Not at all. Please come in, all of you. The office was small, so the children waited outside while Clara, Benjamin, and Samuel entered. Reverend, Clara began, I'm sure you've heard that Mr. Winters is in town, Margaret's brother. The Reverend's expression became guarded. I have. And I'm sure you've heard he has concerns about our family. He's spoken to me, yes. Clara's heart sank. What did he say? Reverend Matthews sighed. He suggested that 7 children is too much for any couple to handle properly, that the orphans among them would be better served in charitable institutions back east, that Benjamin remarried too quickly, and to an unsuitable woman. The words stung, but Clara kept her voice steady. And what do you think, Reverend? I think Harold Winters didn't care enough about his sister to visit her while she was dying. I think he didn't send a single letter of condolence after her death, and I think his sudden concern for these children is suspicious at best. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. But, the Reverend continued, he's not wrong that 7 children is a significant responsibility. The question isn't whether it's difficult, it's whether you're managing it well, whether the children are thriving. They are, Benjamin said firmly. Then prove it. Reverend Matthews looked at Clara. Harold will try to paint you as an outsider who doesn't belong here, an unsuitable guardian. You need to show the community and any authorities he might bring in that you're exactly what these children need. How? Be visible. Be present. Let people see your family as it truly is. And, he paused. There's a town social next Saturday, a gathering in the churchyard, food, games, music. Every family in Cedar Falls attends. If you bring your children and show everyone that they're happy, healthy, and well cared for, it will be much harder for Harold to make his case. Clara nodded slowly. We'll be there. Good. The Reverend smiled. And Mrs. Parker, I married you and Benjamin in this church. I saw something in both of you that gave me hope. Don't let Harold Winters take that away. They left the church to find Harold standing across the street watching them. Clara lifted her chin and walked directly toward him. Mr. Winters, good morning. He looked surprised that she'd approached him. Mrs. Parker, I understand you've been speaking to people in town about our family. I have concerns. So you've said. But here's what I want you to understand. Clara's voice was calm, but steel ran through it. Those children you're so concerned about, they're thriving. They're learning. They're healing from trauma that no child should have to endure. And they're doing all of that because they have a home and a family and people who love them. They have an inexperienced woman playing at being their mother. They have a mother who would die before letting anyone hurt them. Can you say the same, Mr. Winters? Would you die for these children? Or are you just looking for cheap labor for your mills? Harold's face went cold. Be careful what you accuse me of. I'm not accusing. I'm asking. What exactly is your interest in these children? Because it isn't love. Margaret wrote to Benjamin about you, you know. About how you wanted her to send Samuel to work in your mills when he was 8 years old. About how you called her a fool for taking in orphans. About how you told her she was wasting her life on this ranch. Harold's jaw tightened. My sister made poor choices. No, Clara said. She made brave choices. She chose love over money, family over profit. And I'm going to honor that choice by protecting what she built. So, whatever you're planning, Mr. Winters, know that you're going to have to go through me first. She turned and walked back to the wagon, her heart pounding. Benjamin was staring at her with something like awe. Did you just threaten Harold Winters? He asked quietly. I told him the truth. Clara, he's a powerful man, wealthy, connected. And I'm a mother protecting her children. Let's see which is stronger. The week passed in a strange tension. Harold continued his observations, appearing at odd times outside the house in town when they went for supplies at the church on Sunday. Always watching, always taking notes in a small leather book. But Clara refused to be intimidated. She kept to her routines, made sure the children were always clean and well-fed, and engaged in productive activities. When Harold appeared, she greeted him politely and went about her business. Samuel grew increasingly protective, often positioning himself between Harold and the younger children. Ruth became anxious, jumping at every sound. The twins had nightmares again. Elizabeth stopped drawing. Timothy started wetting the bed, and Mary cried whenever she saw Harold, as if she could sense the threat he represented. Friday evening, Clara was putting Mary to bed when the little girl grabbed her face with both hands. "Mama, stay!" Clara's throat tightened. "Yes, baby. Mama stays." "Bad man, go away." "I'm going to try very hard to make him go away." Mary studied her face with those solemn dark eyes. Then she nodded, as if satisfied, and closed her eyes. Clara sat beside the bed until Mary's breathing deepened into sleep. Then she went downstairs to find Benjamin and Samuel at the table, talking in low voices. "Could petition the territorial court," Samuel was saying. "Claim that we're unfit guardians." "On what grounds?" Benjamin asked. "On the grounds that 7 children is excessive, that half of them aren't blood relatives, that Clara is—" Samuel stopped when he saw her in the doorway. "That Clara is what?" she asked quietly. Samuel's face flushed. "An outsider, someone with no family ties to the community, no experience raising children." Clara walked to the table and sat down. "He's not wrong about the experience part. I've never raised children before." "But you're doing a wonderful job," Benjamin protested. "Am I?" Elizabeth has stopped drawing. Timothy is wetting the bed again. The twins are having nightmares. And Mary is terrified of a man she doesn't even know. "That's not your fault. That's Harold's fault for being here, for threatening them." "But will a judge see it that way?" Clara looked between them. If Harold brings this before the territorial court, what will they see? A woman who's been here less than 2 months. Children who are showing signs of distress. A household that's barely holding together under pressure. "We're holding together fine," Samuel said fiercely. "We're a family." "I know we are. But proving that to a court, to people who don't know us." Clara shook her head. "We need help." "What kind of help?" Benjamin asked. "The kind that comes from community. From people who can testify that we're good parents, that the children are thriving." She thought about Reverend Matthew's words. "The social tomorrow, that's our chance. We need everyone in Cedar Falls to see this family at its best, to see that we belong together." Benjamin reached across the table and took her hand. "Then that's what we'll show them." Saturday dawned clear and bright. Clara woke early and threw herself into preparations with an intensity that surprised even her. She baked pies, apple and cherry. She pressed everyone's best clothes. She braided the girls' hair with ribbons. She made sure every child was scrubbed clean and looking their absolute best. "Why are we trying so hard?" Elizabeth asked as Clara adjusted her dress for the 3rd time. "Because sometimes the world judges you before it knows you," Clara said. "And we need to make sure their first real look at us shows them the truth." "What truth?" Clara knelt down so she was at Elizabeth's level. "That you are loved, that you are cared for, that you belong in this family and no one has the right to take you away." Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too." "Really? Really? But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway." Elizabeth thought about that. Then she nodded and wiped her eyes. By the time they loaded into the wagon, they looked like a picture of frontier family life, clean, neat, wholesome. Clara held Mary on her lap while the older children arranged themselves in the wagon bed. Benjamin drove with Samuel beside him on the bench. As they approached the church, Clara could see the gathering already in full swing. Tables laden with food, children running and playing, adults talking in clusters, and standing at the edge of it all, watching them arrive, was Harold Winters. Clara took a deep breath. "Ready! Ready!" The children chorused, though their voices trembled. They climbed down from the wagon and walked into the social together. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward them. Then Reverend Matthews stepped forward. "Benjamin, Clara, so glad you could make it. Children, there are games starting over by the big oak tree. Why don't you go join in?" It was an offer of normalcy, of acceptance. Clara watched as the older children hesitated, then slowly drifted toward the other young people. Timothy grabbed Michael's hand. Mary clung to Clara's skirt. "It's all right," Clara murmured to Mary. "Go play with the other children." But Mary shook her head and buried her face in Clara's dress. Mrs. Thornton from the general store appeared at Clara's elbow. "Let her stay with you for a bit. New places are scary at that age." She smiled at Mary. "Hello, sweetheart. Do you remember me from the store?" Mary peeked out at her. "I have a granddaughter about your age." Mrs. Thornton continued. "She's over there with the blocks. Maybe in a little while you'd like to play with her." Mary considered this, then nodded shyly. Other women began approaching. Some were merely curious. Others were genuinely kind. Clara answered their questions, introduced Mary, accepted compliments on her pies. She was aware of Harold watching from across the yard, still taking notes. Then she saw him approach Ruth, who was standing alone near the food tables looking lost. Clara excused herself and headed that direction, but she was too far away to hear what Harold said. She saw Ruth's face go pale, saw the girl's hands start to shake. By the time Clara reached them, Harold was already walking away, and Ruth looked like she might be sick. "What did he say to you?" Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. "He asked if I was happy, if I liked having a new mother, if I missed my real mother." Clara's blood ran hot. "What did you tell him?" I said I did miss Mama every day, but that you were kind to us and I was glad you were here." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Did I say the wrong thing? Did I hurt your feelings?" "No, sweetheart. You told the truth. That's always the right thing." Clara pulled Ruth close. "You're allowed to miss your mother and still care about me. Those things aren't contradictory." He made it sound like they were, like I was betraying Mama by accepting you. "That's because he wants you confused and guilty. He wants all of you feeling like you don't deserve to be happy." Clara held Ruth at arm's length, looking into her eyes. "But you do deserve happiness, all of you, and I'm going to make sure you get it." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Clara watched as Samuel joined a group of older boys in a game that involved throwing horseshoes. Watched as the twins actually separated and joined different activities, a sign of growing confidence. Watched as Elizabeth gradually warmed up and started talking to other girls her age. Watched as Timothy ran and played like any 5-year-old, his earlier trauma momentarily forgotten. And she watched as Mary finally cautiously left her side to play with Mrs. Thornton's granddaughter. "They look happy," a voice said beside her. Clara turned to find a young woman with a kind face. "I'm Sarah Wells. My husband and I have a small farm north of here." "Clara Parker." "I know. Everyone knows." Sarah smiled. "I wanted to tell you that I think what you're doing is wonderful. Taking in all these children, making a family out of heartbreak." "Thank you." "My mother was a mail-order bride," Sarah continued. "Came west 30 years ago to marry a man she'd never met. People said terrible things about her, questioned her motives, questioned her fitness as a wife and mother. But she proved them all wrong." She paused. "I see the same strength in you." Clara felt tears threaten. "I'm not sure I'm strong enough for this." "Strength isn't something you have," Sarah said. "It's something you build, every day, every challenge. You're building it right now." More women approached throughout the afternoon offering similar encouragement. Not all of them, some remained distant, judgmental, but enough that Clara began to feel less alone. Then, as the sun started to sink toward the horizon, she saw Harold talking to a man she didn't recognize. A man in official-looking clothes with a badge on his chest. Benjamin saw them too. "That's Marshal Dixon, Territorial Marshal." Clara's stomach dropped. "What's Harold telling him?" "Nothing good." They watched as Harold gestured toward the Parker children, still playing with the others. Watched as he showed the marshal his notebook. Watched as the marshal's expression grew serious. Then both men started walking toward Benjamin and Clara. "Mr. Parker. Mrs. Parker." The marshal's voice was neutral. "I'm Marshal James Dixon. I wonder if I might have a word." "Of course," Benjamin said, though his jaw was tight. "Mr. Winters here has expressed some concerns about the children in your care. I need to ask you some questions." "What kind of concerns?" Clara asked. Harold smiled coldly. "The kind that suggest 7 children is more than 2 people can adequately manage. The kind that suggest some of those children might be better served elsewhere." "That's not your decision to make," Benjamin said. "No." Marshal Dixon agreed. "Which is why I'll be conducting an investigation. I'll be visiting your ranch this week, interviewing each child separately, assessing the living conditions, and determining whether all of these children should remain in your custody." Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. "You're threatening to take our children." "I'm not threatening anything, ma'am. I'm doing my job. If the children are well cared for, and you can demonstrate that you're capable of providing for all 7, then there won't be a problem. And if you decide we're not capable," Benjamin's voice was dangerous, "then I'll have to make recommendations to the territorial court about placement, possibly institutions, possibly with family members who have resources to care for them properly." Marshal Dixon glanced at Harold. "Mr. Winters has offered to take custody of any children I deem at risk." Clara's vision went red. "Over my dead body." "Clara!" Benjamin grabbed her arm, but she shook him off and stepped toward Harold. "You want these children. You want to take them from their home and put them to work in your mills. You want to destroy this family for profit." "I want," Harold said coldly, "what's best for my sister's children. And what's best is not being raised by a stranger who married their father for convenience." "I married their father because I wanted a family, because I was tired of being alone, because I believed in the possibility of building something real out here." Clara's voice shook with fury. "And I got that family. I got 7 beautiful children who needed love, and I gave it to them. I gave them everything I had. And you who didn't visit your sister when she was dying, who didn't send a single word of comfort after her death, who didn't care about these children until you saw a way to profit from them. You think you have the right to judge me?" "I have the right," Harold said, "because they are my blood. You are nothing to them. I am their mother." The words rang out across the churchyard. Conversation stopped. People turned to stare. Clara realized she'd been shouting. She took a breath, trying to calm herself, but the fury was still burning in her chest. "I am their mother," she repeated, quieter, but no less fierce. "Maybe not by birth, maybe not by blood, but by choice, by love. By every sleepless night, and every worry, and every moment of joy, and every tear, and every laugh, and every single day I've spent trying to be what they need. That makes me their mother, and you will not take them from me." Marshal Dixon was watching her intently. "Mrs. Parker." "Marshal, I understand you have a job to do. I understand you need to make sure these children are safe and cared for. And I welcome that. Come to our home, interview the children, see how they live, see how they're thriving, and then tell me if you truly believe they'd be better off in some institution or in Harold Winters' textile mills." The marshal's expression was unreadable. "I'll be at your ranch on Tuesday morning. I expect full cooperation." "You'll have it." He tipped his hat and walked away. Harold lingered, that cold smile still on his face. "You've made this very dramatic, Mrs. Parker. But theatrics won't change the facts. 7 children is too many. You're too inexperienced. And I have resources you don't." He leaned closer. "I'm going to win. And those children are going to learn what real discipline and purpose look like." Clara met his eyes. "Then I guess Tuesday will be very interesting," Because I'm going to show that Marshall exactly what love looks like. And we'll see which he thinks matters more, your resources or our family." Harold walked away. Benjamin pulled Clara close. She was shaking, adrenaline and fear and fury all mixed together. "Did I just make things worse?" she whispered. "No." Benjamin's voice was firm. "You told the truth, and the truth is all we have." Around them, Clara could feel the eyes of Cedar Falls watching. Some sympathetic, some scandalized, some uncertain. But when she looked up, she saw Sarah Wells giving her an approving nod, saw Mrs. Thornton wiping her eyes, saw Reverend Matthews looking proud. And most importantly, she saw her children. All 7 of them had stopped playing and were standing together watching her. Samuel's face was fierce with pride. Ruth was crying, but smiling. Elizabeth looked awed. The twins stood tall. Timothy was holding Mary, who was reaching toward Clara. Her children. Her family. And she would fight with everything she had to keep them together. "Let's go home," she said. They gathered the children and climbed into the wagon. As they pulled away from the church, Clara looked back one last time. Harold Winters stood alone, still watching them, still certain he would win. He had no idea what he'd unleashed. The schoolteacher from Pennsylvania was gone. In her place was a mother, and mothers were the fiercest creatures God ever made. The ride home was silent, except for Mary's soft whimpering and the creak of the wagon wheels. Clara held the toddler close, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over her like a heavy blanket. Tuesday. The marshal was coming on Tuesday. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to make sure everything was perfect. 3 days to prove they deserved to stay together. When they reached the ranch, the children climbed down slowly, their earlier happiness from the social completely evaporated. They stood in a cluster near the porch, uncertain and afraid. Clara handed Mary to Ruth and turned to face them all. "Inside, everyone, we need to talk." They filed into the house and gathered in the living area. Benjamin stood beside Clara, his hand finding hers. She squeezed it, drawing strength from his presence. "All right," Clara began. "You all heard what happened. Marshal Dixon is coming here on Tuesday to investigate our family, to decide if we should be allowed to stay together." Timothy started crying immediately. Elizabeth pressed close to Ruth. The twins grabbed each other's hands. Even Samuel looked shaken. "I'm scared," Timothy whispered. "I know, sweetheart. I am too." Clara knelt down so she was at their level. "But being scared doesn't mean we give up. It means we fight harder." "How do we fight a marshal?" Michael asked, his voice small. "By showing him the truth. By being ourselves. By proving that this family is real and strong and full of love." Clara looked at each child. "When Marshal Dixon comes here, he's going to ask you questions. Probably hard questions. About how you're treated. Whether you're happy. Whether you feel safe." "What should we say?" Matthew's voice trembled. "The truth. Always the truth." Clara stood and began pacing. "If he asks if I'm strict, tell him yes. If he asks if there are rules, tell him yes. If he asks if you ever go to bed hungry, or if you're ever hit or mistreated, you tell him no. Because none of those things happen here." "But what if he asks about Mama?" Elizabeth's voice was barely audible. "Our real Mama." Clara stopped pacing. "Then you tell him about her. You tell him she was wonderful and you miss her every single day. You tell him the truth, that I'm not trying to replace her, that I'm just trying to help you heal while honoring her memory." "Mr. Winters said I was betraying Mama by liking you," Ruth said, tears streaming down her face. "He said Mama would be ashamed of me." Clara's fury reignited, but she kept her voice calm. "Ruth, look at me. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world, and what she would want more than anything is for you to be happy and safe and loved. She would want you to heal, to grow, to have a good life. And if accepting help from me makes that possible, then your mother would be grateful, not ashamed." "How do you know?" "Because that's what mothers do. We want our children to thrive, even if we can't be there to see it." Clara's throat tightened. "Your mother gave you everything she had while she was alive. Now she'd want you to accept what others can give you. That's not betrayal. That's honoring her sacrifice by living well." Ruth sobbed and threw herself into Clara's arms. Clara held her, feeling the girl's whole body shake with grief and confusion and fear. "I don't want to lose this family," Ruth choked out. "I already lost Mama. I can't lose everyone else too." "You won't," Clara promised. "I won't let that happen." Samuel's voice cut through the emotion. "But what if you can't stop it? What if the marshal decides Mr. Winters is right? What if he says we should be separated?" Clara released Ruth and turned to Samuel. "Then we appeal. We fight it in court. We get lawyers. We make so much noise that every newspaper in the territory knows what's happening. We do whatever it takes." "That costs money," Samuel said quietly. "Money we don't have. Then we'll find it. We'll sell things. We'll borrow. No." Benjamin's voice was firm. He'd been quiet until now, but something in his expression had changed. "We won't have to do any of that, because Marshal Dixon is going to see what I see, what everyone at that social saw. He's going to see a family that works, and he's going to tell Harold Winters to go back east and leave us alone." "You sound very sure," Samuel said. "I am sure, because I know my children, and I know my wife." Benjamin looked at Clara. "And I know that when the marshal talks to each of you, he's going to see exactly what you are loved, cared for, and thriving." "But are we thriving?" Elizabeth's voice was small. I stopped drawing. "Timothy's having accidents again. Michael and Matthew have nightmares. We're falling apart." "You're not falling apart," Clara said gently. "You're reacting normally to an abnormal situation. You're scared because someone is threatening your home. That's not weakness. That's proof that this home matters to you." She moved to the center of the room, looking at each child in turn. "Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, Sunday, we rest. We stay home from church. We spend the day together as a family, doing normal things. Monday, we prepare. We clean the house top to bottom. We organize. We make sure everything is perfect. And Tuesday, when Marshal Dixon arrives, we show him a normal day in the Parker household. Breakfast, chores, lessons, lunch, more chores. Everything we always do. Nothing fake. Nothing forced. Just us being us." "What if that's not enough?" Timothy asked. Clara knelt down and took his small hands in hers. "Then it's not enough. But Timothy, listen to me. Even if the worst happens, even if the marshal tries to take some of you away, I will fight with every breath in my body to get you back. Do you believe me?" Timothy studied her face, his eyes still wet with tears. Then slowly he nodded. "Yes." "Good. Now all of you bed. It's been a long day, and tomorrow we're going to sleep late and eat big breakfasts, and maybe I'll even make cookies." "Really?" Mary perked up at the word cookies. "Really. But only if everyone goes to bed right now without arguing." The children dispersed, heading upstairs with Ruth herding the younger ones. Samuel lingered behind his expression troubled. "Mrs. Parker. Clara, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you doing this? Fighting this hard, I mean. You could leave. Get on a train back east. Start over somewhere else. No one would blame you." Clara looked at this boy who was trying so hard to be a man who carried so much weight on his young shoulders. "Do you want me to leave, Samuel?" "No." The answer came quick and fierce. "No, I don't understand why you'd stay. Why you'd risk everything for children who aren't even yours." "But you are mine," Clara said simply. "Maybe not by blood, but you're mine by choice, by love, by the fact that I wake up every morning thinking about you, and go to bed every night worrying about you, and spend every moment in between trying to figure out how to help you heal, and grow, and become the person you're meant to be. That makes you mine, Samuel. All of you. And I don't abandon what's mine." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to help you fight this," Yes, you do. You help by being exactly who you are. By telling the marshal the truth when he asks you questions. By taking care of your siblings like you always do. By being the strong, good young man your mother raised you to be. Clara reached out and squeezed his shoulder. Your mother did an amazing job with you, Samuel. I just want to make sure her work isn't destroyed. Thank you, Samuel whispered. Then impulsively, he hugged her. It was quick, awkward, but genuine. Clara held him for that brief moment, feeling his fear and his trust all mixed together. When he pulled away, he wiped his eyes roughly and headed upstairs without another word. Benjamin came to stand beside Clara. They stood together in the quiet house, listening to the sounds of children settling into bed above them. You meant what you said, Benjamin said. About fighting with every breath. Every word. Harold has money, connections, power. And I have something more important. Clara turned to face him. I have love. I have righteous fury. And I have absolutely nothing to lose, because if those children are taken away, my whole reason for being here disappears anyway. Benjamin pulled her close. I don't deserve you. You've said that before, and I'll say what I said then, probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed, the sound breaking through the tension. I love you, Clara Parker. The words hung in the air. They'd been married for nearly 2 months, but this was the first time he'd said it. Clara's throat tightened. I love you too, and I love those children upstairs, and I'll be damned if Harold Winters or anyone else is going to tear this family apart. That night, Clara lay awake long after Benjamin fell asleep. She kept thinking about Tuesday, about what the marshal might ask, about what could go wrong, about the fact that Harold was probably right. 7 children was a lot. She was inexperienced. She'd only been here 2 months. But she'd also helped Ruth stop trying to mother everyone and just be 12 again. She'd helped Elizabeth start drawing again, even if the girl had stopped recently. She'd helped the twins learn to trust adults again after their trauma. She'd helped Timothy feel safe enough to sleep through the night, at least until Harold arrived, and she'd given Mary the only mother the child had ever really known. That had to count for something. It had to. Sunday dawned cloudy and cool. True to her word, Clara let everyone sleep late. She made a huge breakfast, pancakes, bacon, eggs, everything she could think of. The children came down gradually, still subdued, but slightly less terrified than the night before. No church today, Ruth asked. Not today. Today we stay home and just be together. After breakfast, Clara sent the boys outside with Benjamin to work with the horses. She kept the girls inside for quieter activities. They baked cookies. Mary's dough was more in her mouth than on the pan, but no one minded. They worked on mending. They read stories. By afternoon, some of the normalcy had returned. Clara heard laughter from outside where the boys were playing. Inside, Elizabeth had pulled out her drawings again and was showing them to Mary, explaining each picture. Ruth hummed while she kneaded bread dough. It wasn't perfect. There was still fear underneath everything. But it was real, and real was what they needed. That evening, after the children were in bed, Clara sat with Benjamin at the kitchen table and made lists. Things the marshal might ask about, she said, writing quickly. Education we need to show we're teaching them. Health, all the children are healthy, we can prove that. Living conditions, the house is clean, everyone has a bed. Food, we have adequate supplies. Discipline. We need to explain our rules and consequences without making it sound harsh. Love. She paused. How do you prove love? You can't, Benjamin said. But you can show it. In how the children respond to you. In how they talk about you. In how they act when you're around versus when you're not. Clara nodded and kept writing. Harold's going to paint me as an outsider, a stranger who doesn't belong here. We need to counter that. How? By showing that I've become part of this family, part of this community, that I'm not just passing through, I'm building a life here. She tapped the pencil against the paper. We need people to testify for us. To tell the marshal that we're good parents. Who would do that? Reverend Matthews, for one. He married us. He's seen us at church every week. He knows the children. Clara thought about the social. Mrs. Thornton seemed sympathetic. Sarah Wells offered support. Maybe some of the other families who have children they've seen ours playing together. They can speak to whether our children are well-behaved, happy, healthy. Benjamin looked doubtful. Will people really stand up for us against Harold Winters? Some will, some won't. But we only need a few voices. A few people willing to say that what we've built here is real and good and worth protecting. Monday arrived too quickly. Clara woke before dawn and immediately started cleaning. She scrubbed floors that were already clean. She organized cupboards that were already organized. She polished furniture until it gleamed. The children, sensing her anxiety, threw themselves into helping. Samuel cleaned the barn. Ruth reorganized the kitchen. Elizabeth dusted every surface. The twins swept. Timothy tried to help and mostly got in the way, but Clara praised his efforts anyway. Mary followed Clara around, occasionally handing her random objects like a helpful assistant. By afternoon, the house was immaculate, almost unnaturally clean. Benjamin came in from the ranch work and stopped in the doorway staring. "Clara, it looks like no one lives here." She looked around and realized he was right. She'd scrubbed away all signs of life. "Oh no. It's all right. We'll make it look lived in again. Normal." They spent the next hour carefully putting things back. Children's drawings on the wall, books scattered on tables, small toys in corners. The signs of a family actually living, not just existing. That evening, Clara called another family meeting. "Tomorrow the marshal will arrive sometime in the morning. He'll probably want to talk to each of you separately. You need to be prepared for that." "What kind of questions will he ask?" Michael asked nervously. "Probably things like, are you happy here? Do you get enough to eat? Are you punished unfairly? Do you feel safe? Do you go to school? Are you learning things?" Clara paused. "He might ask harder questions too, like whether you're forced to work too much, whether Benjamin or I have ever hurt you, whether you'd rather live somewhere else." "And we tell the truth," Matthew confirmed. "Always the truth. Don't exaggerate how good things are, the marshal will see through that. But don't downplay it either. Just be honest about your life here." "What if Mr. Winters is there?" Elizabeth's voice shook. "What if he's listening?" "Then you ignore him and focus on the marshal. Remember, Harold doesn't have power over you. He's just a man with opinions. The marshal is the one making decisions." Samuel spoke up. "What if the marshal asks about Ma? About how we feel about Clara replacing her? Then you tell him the truth, that no one is replacing your mother. That Clara is helping you heal while honoring your mother's memory. That you're allowed to love both." Clara looked at Samuel. "Unless that's not the truth. If you don't feel that way, you need to say so." Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then, "It is the truth. I was angry at first. When Pa brought you home, I thought it was too soon, that he didn't really love Ma. But I was wrong. You're not trying to replace Ma. You're here. And we need you here." Ruth nodded. "I feel the same way. At first I was angry and guilty and confused. But you're good to us. You listen to us. You care about what we think and feel. That's all I need." One by one, the other children added their agreement. Even Timothy, who barely remembered Margaret, said, "You're my mama now. Is that okay?" Clara's eyes burned with tears. "That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's everything." After the children were in bed, Clara stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the dark Wyoming landscape. Tomorrow would determine everything. Tomorrow a stranger would arrive and decide whether her family deserved to stay together. She felt Benjamin come up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly, "I want you to know that marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You've given this family life again, hope again. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that? A future worth fighting for. Clara leaned back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. Then let's make sure we have that future. Let's make sure Tuesday is the day we prove to everyone Harold the Marshal, the whole territory, that this family belongs together. We will. Clara wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that love and truth and determination would be enough. But she'd been a teacher long enough to know that the world didn't always work that way. That sometimes the powerful won simply because they had resources the powerless didn't. That sometimes families were torn apart despite everyone's best efforts. But she couldn't think like that. Not tonight. Not when 7 children were sleeping upstairs trusting her to protect them. She would protect them, whatever it took. Tuesday morning arrived with cruel brightness. The sun came up clear and warm, mocking Clara's anxiety. She was dressed and in the kitchen before anyone else woke, already preparing breakfast with shaking hands. One by one, the children appeared. They were quiet, subdued, their fear palpable. Even Mary seemed to sense the tension, clinging to Ruth and refusing to let go. "Eat," Clara said, setting food on the table. "All of you. We're going to have a normal morning. Normal breakfast. Normal chores. Normal everything." How can this be normal when a marshal is coming to decide if we get to stay together? Samuel's voice was sharp with stress. Because we can't let fear control us. We do what we always do. We show Marshal Dixon who we really are, not a performance, but the truth. They were halfway through breakfast when they heard the horses. Everyone froze. Timothy's fork clattered to his plate. Elizabeth grabbed Ruth's hand. The twins went pale. Clara stood up, forcing herself to stay calm. "Finish eating, all of you. I'll go see who it is." But she already knew. She walked to the door and opened it to find Marshal Dixon dismounting from his horse. He was alone, no sign of Harold Winters. That was something at least. "Marshal, good morning." "Mrs. Parker." He tipped his hat. "I hope I'm not too early." "Not at all. We're just finishing breakfast. Would you like some coffee?" "That would be appreciated." Clara led him inside. The children were still at the table, frozen in place, staring at the marshal with wide, frightened eyes. "Good morning, children," Marshal Dixon said. His voice was neutral, professional. A quiet chorus of "Good morning, sir," followed. Clara poured coffee and set it in front of the marshal. "How would you like to proceed?" "I'd like to observe your morning routine first. See how things normally work here. Then I'll conduct individual interviews with each child." He pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Winters has made some serious allegations. It's my job to determine their validity." "What allegations specifically?" Benjamin asked, his voice tight. "That 7 children is too many for one couple to adequately care for. That some of the children are showing signs of distress and neglect. That Mrs. Parker is unqualified to raise children, especially children who've suffered trauma. That the living conditions are substandard." Marshal Dixon looked around the clean, well-organized house. "I'll be honest, so far, I'm not seeing evidence of that last one." "Because it's not true," Clara said firmly. "None of it is true." "Then you have nothing to worry about, ma'am." The marshal took a sip of coffee. "Please continue with your morning as you normally would. Pretend I'm not here. Pretend a man who could tear their family apart wasn't sitting at their table. Pretend everything was normal." "Right." Clara took a breath and turned to the children. "All right. Everyone finish breakfast. Ruth, when you're done, I need your help with the dishes. Samuel, you and Michael have morning chores in the barn. Elizabeth, you're working on your reading lesson with me. Matthew, you're helping your father with fence repairs. Timothy, you're going to practice your numbers. And Mary." "Mary helps Mama," the toddler announced. Despite everything, Clara smiled. "Yes, Mary helps Mama." The marshal watched as the children finished eating and began their tasks. Clara moved through the morning routine with deliberate calm, explaining what she was doing and why. Teaching Elizabeth to read while Mary played at her feet. helping Timothy count using beans, checking on Ruth's dishwashing and praising her thoroughness. All the while, Marshall Dixon watched, taking notes, asking occasional questions. How often do the children have lessons? Every weekday, reading, writing, arithmetic, history. The older ones are more advanced, obviously. The younger ones are just starting. And religious instruction. We attend church every Sunday. We say grace before meals. But we don't force religion on them. We let them ask questions and find their own faith. What about discipline? How do you handle misbehavior? Clara hesitated. It depends on the situation. Minor things, talking back, small arguments, usually just require a conversation about why the behavior was wrong. More serious issues might result in loss of privileges or extra chores. We don't believe in harsh physical punishment. Never. Never. These children have been through enough pain. I won't add to it. Marshall Dixon made a note. Mr. Winters suggested that you're too lenient, that the children run wild without proper structure. Then Mr. Winters hasn't spent much time observing us, Clara said coolly. We have rules, bedtimes, chores, expectations. But we also have love and patience and understanding. Those things aren't weaknesses, Marshall. They're necessities. Some would argue that children need a firm hand. And some children have been beaten down by life so much that they need a gentle hand to help them stand back up. Clara met his eyes. I'm not raising soldiers, Marshall. I'm raising children who've survived trauma. That requires different approaches. The Marshal nodded slowly. I'd like to begin the individual interviews now, starting with the oldest. Clara's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. Samuel, the Marshal would like to talk to you. Samuel came in from the barn wiping his hands on his pants. He looked terrified, but determined. Clara wanted to hug him to tell him it would be all right, but she just squeezed his shoulder as he passed. You can use the front room, she told the Marshal. I'll be in the kitchen with the other children. For the next 3 hours, Marshall Dixon interviewed each child separately. Clara waited in the kitchen with the others, anxiety building with each passing minute. She tried to keep them occupied, more lessons, more chores, anything to distract from the fear. When it was Timothy's turn, the 5-year-old looked up at Clara with tears streaming down his face. I don't want to go. I know, sweetheart, but you have to. Just tell him the truth about our family, okay? Tell him if you're happy here. But what if I say the wrong thing? What if I make him take us away? Clara knelt down and held his small face in her hands. Timothy, listen to me. There is no wrong thing. You just tell him how you feel. If you tell him you love this family and you want to stay, that's the right answer. If you tell him you're scared sometimes, that's also the right answer. The truth is always right. Timothy nodded and walked toward the front room, his small shoulders squared with courage. By the time the Marshal finished interviewing Mary, who mostly said Mama and Cookie, and refused to leave Clara's lap, it was past noon. Clara made lunch while Marshall Dixon reviewed his notes in the front room. When she brought him a plate, he looked up at her with an expression she couldn't read. Mrs. Parker, I need to be honest with you. When I arrived here this morning, I was prepared to find evidence supporting Mr. Winters' claims. I've seen a lot of frontier families, and most can barely manage 2 or 3 children, let alone 7. Clara's heart stopped. But, the Marshal continued, what I've found here is remarkable. Every single child I interviewed told me essentially the same thing, that they're loved, cared for, and happy. That you and Mr. Parker provide structure without cruelty, that they feel safe, that they're learning and growing. He paused. Young Samuel told me something that particularly struck me. He said you're not trying to replace his mother, but you're helping him remember her without the grief overwhelming him. Those were his exact words. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Ruth told me you're the first person who's let her be a child again instead of a substitute mother. Elizabeth said you listen when she talks about missing her mother. The twins said they've stopped having nightmares since you started reading to them every night. Timothy said you taught him it's okay to be scared sometimes. And little Mary? The marshal smiled slightly. Little Mary wouldn't stop talking about her mama, which I gather is you. Yes, Clara whispered. Mrs. Parker, I've seen neglect. I've seen abuse. I've seen children who are genuinely suffering in bad situations. Marshal Dixon set down his notebook. That's not what I found here. What I found is a family that's working. Not perfect, no family is perfect, but working, loving, growing. So you're not going to take them away. I'm not going to recommend removal, no. However, he held up a hand as Clara's relief started to show. Mr. Winters has made it clear he's not going to accept my findings. He's already talking about petitioning the territorial court directly, claiming that as Margaret's brother, he has a greater right to custody of her blood children than you do. The relief evaporated. Can he do that? He can try. And with his resources, he might succeed. Especially if he can convince a judge that the children would be better off with blood family. But they wouldn't be better off. He wants to put them to work in his mills. He doesn't care about them, he cares about profit. I believe you, but belief isn't proof. Marshal Dixon stood. Here's what I can do. I'll file a report stating that in my professional opinion, the Parker household is suitable for all 7 children. That they're thriving under your care. That removal would be detrimental to their well-being. But if Winters pushes this to court, you're going to need more than my report. What do we need? Witnesses. People willing to testify that you're good parents. Community support. Maybe even legal representation, though good lawyers are hard to find out here. He picked up his hat. I'm sorry I can't do more, Mrs. Parker. But the law has limits, especially when wealthy men get involved. Clara walked him to the door, her mind already racing ahead to the next battle. Thank you, Marshal, for being fair, for seeing the truth. Just doing my job, ma'am. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, those children love you. Real, genuine love. That's not something that can be faked or forced. Whatever happens next, remember that. After the marshal left, Clara stood on the porch watching him ride away. She felt Benjamin come up beside her. I heard, he said quietly, Winters is going to court. Then we go to court too. Clara, court means lawyers, money, time, things we don't have much of. She turned to face him. Then we find them. We borrow money if we have to. We sell things. We do whatever it takes. And if we lose... Clara looked back at the house, where 7 children were waiting to hear if their family was safe. We won't lose. We can't lose. Because losing means those children get torn away from the only home some of them have ever known. It means Timothy ends up in an institution. It means the twins get separated. It means Mary grows up in a textile mill instead of on this ranch learning to love and be loved. It means fighting Harold Winters in a system designed to favor men like him. Then we'll fight anyway. Clara's voice was steel. I didn't come this far and love these children this much just to hand them over to a man who sees them as commodities. We fight, Benjamin. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with. And then we fight some more. Benjamin pulled her close. Then we fight. They stood there together, the Wyoming sun warm on their faces, preparing for a battle that would determine everything. Inside the house, 7 children waited. 7 children who had already lost so much. 7 children who deserved a chance at happiness. 7 children who had found a mother willing to move heaven and earth to protect them. And that mother wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Clara walked back inside to find all 7 children crowded in the kitchen doorway, their faces pale with worry. What did he say? Samuel asked immediately. Is he taking us away? No, not today. Clara gathered them close. Marshal Dixon said you're all staying here. He's filing a report that says we're good parents and you're thriving. Relief flooded their faces, but Clara held up her hand before they could celebrate. But Mr. Winters isn't giving up. He's going to take this to the territorial court. He's going to try to convince a judge that some of you, especially the blood children, should go live with him instead. The relief vanished instantly, replaced by fresh terror. When? Ruth's voice trembled. I don't know. Could be weeks. Could be months. But it's coming, and we need to be ready. Clara looked at Benjamin. We need to start gathering witnesses. People who can testify that we're good parents. That the children are happy and healthy here. I'll talk to Reverend Matthews tonight, Benjamin said, and some of the other ranchers. Men who've known me for years. I'll talk to the women from the social, Clara added. Mrs. Thornton, Sarah Wells, anyone who seemed sympathetic. She turned back to the children. And you, all of you, need to keep living your lives. Keep doing your chores, your lessons, your playing, because when this goes to court, we need to show that this family works, that it's real. How can we just keep living like normal when someone's trying to take us away? Elizabeth asked, her voice breaking. Clara knelt down to the girl's level. Because that's what brave people do. They keep going even when they're scared. They keep choosing joy even when there's darkness threatening. They keep loving even when love seems fragile. She touched Elizabeth's cheek. Can you do that for me? Elizabeth nodded, tears spilling over. That evening, after the children were finally settled, though none of them had wanted to go to bed, afraid of what might happen while they slept, Clara sat at the kitchen table with Benjamin and began making lists again. Reverend Matthews will testify, Benjamin said. He told me tonight that he'd speak to Harold's character too. Apparently, Harold tried to pressure him into speaking against us, and the Reverend didn't appreciate that. Good. Who else? Tom Bradley from the next ranch over. His wife died last year and he's raising 3 children alone. He understands what we're dealing with. And Margaret's friend Catherine Morris, she knew Margaret better than anyone. She can testify that Margaret would have wanted the children to stay together and be loved, not separated. Clara added names to her list. Mrs. Thornton said she'd speak for us. Sarah Wells too. And there's a school teacher in town, Miss Harrison, who's met the older children and can testify about their education level. That's 8 people. Is that enough? I don't know, but it's a start. Clara stared at the list. We also need to address the money issue. Court costs, lawyer fees. How are we going to pay for all of that? Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. We could sell the cattle, take a loss this year, but it would give us the cash we need. And risk losing the ranch? The ranch doesn't matter if we lose the children. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. We'll find another way. We're not destroying everything you've built. Clara. No. We'll borrow money if we have to. We'll ask the community for help. But we're not giving up the ranch. These children need stability. They need to know that even if we're fighting in court, their home is secure. You're assuming we win. I'm assuming we fight with everything we have. And if we lose, her voice caught. If we lose, then at least we'll have tried everything possible. The next few days were a blur of activity. Benjamin rode out to neighboring ranches talking to anyone who might be willing to testify. Clara went into town and spoke with women she barely knew, asking them to stand up for her family. She visited the school teacher, the store owners, even the doctor who'd treated Timothy for a fever a few weeks back. Some people agreed immediately. Others were hesitant. Harold Winters was a powerful man, and crossing him could have consequences. But slowly, a list of witnesses began to form. Then, a week after Marshal Dixon's visit, a rider arrived with a formal court summons. Clara's hands shook as she read it. The hearing was set for 3 weeks away in Cheyenne, the territorial capital. Harold Winters was petitioning for custody of Samuel Ruth and Elizabeth Parker on the grounds that as their deceased mother's brother, he had both a legal and moral right to raise them. He was also requesting that the court remove Timothy Jameson Michael and Matthew Crawford and Mary Doe from the Parker household and place them in appropriate charitable institutions. He's trying to take all of them, Clara whispered. Every single one. Benjamin read over her shoulder, his face going pale. The hearing is in Cheyenne. That's 2 days' travel. We'll need to bring the children. The judge will want to see them, talk to them. And we'll need a lawyer. The only lawyer I know in Cheyenne charges more than we can afford." Clara folded the summons with deliberate care. "Then we'll find someone else, or we'll represent ourselves. But we're going to that hearing, and we're going to fight." That evening, she called another family meeting. The children had gotten used to these now, and they gathered with grim faces, already knowing something was wrong. "The court hearing is in 3 weeks," Clara said without preamble. "In Cheyenne. We're all going, you, me, your father. We'll be gone for at least a week, maybe longer." "What happens at the hearing?" Samuel asked. "A judge listens to both sides. Mr. Winters will explain why he thinks he should have custody of Samuel, Ruth, and Elizabeth, and why he thinks the rest of you should go to institutions. We'll explain why you should all stay here. Then the judge decides." "What if the judge agrees with Mr. Winters?" Michael's voice was barely audible. Clara had been dreading this question. "Then we appeal. We fight it at a higher court. We keep fighting until we win, or there's nowhere left to fight." "And if we run out of places to fight?" Matthew finished the thought. The room went silent. Even Mary seemed to sense the weight of the moment, her small hand gripping Clara's skirt. "Then," Clara's voice broke. She took a breath and tried again. "Then I will have done everything in my power to keep you safe, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." Ruth started crying. Elizabeth joined her. Timothy crawled into Clara's lap and buried his face in her shoulder. The twins sat close together, holding hands. Samuel stared at the floor, his jaw clenched. "I won't let it happen," Clara said fiercely, holding Timothy close. "I know I keep saying that, and I know you're all scared, but I mean it. I will not let Harold Winters destroy this family. Do you hear me? I won't." "How can you promise that?" Samuel's voice was harsh. "You can't control what a judge decides. You can't force the law to be fair." "No. But I can make sure that judge sees the truth, sees how much we love each other, sees that this family is real and strong and worth preserving." Clara met Samuel's eyes. "And I can make sure that if the worst happens, you all know that you were loved. Completely. Fiercely. Without reservation." Samuel's face crumpled. This boy who'd been trying so hard to be strong, to be the man of the family, finally broke. He sobbed into his hands while his siblings crowded around him, and Clara held them all as best she could, her own tears falling freely. Benjamin stood at the edge of the group, his own eyes wet. "We're a family," he said quietly. "Whatever the court says, whatever happens, we're a family. No one can take that away from us." The 3 weeks before the hearing passed too quickly and too slowly, all at once. Clara taught the children their lessons with extra intensity, determined to show the judge how much they'd learned. She made sure their clothes were mended and clean. She practiced answers to questions the judge might ask, though she knew there was no way to prepare for everything. Letters arrived from their witnesses, confirming they would travel to Cheyenne to testify. Reverend Matthews wrote that he'd spoken to other clergy in the territory, building a network of support. Mrs. Thornton rallied the women of Cedar Falls, and several agreed to make the journey to testify. But there was still no lawyer. Every attorney Benjamin contacted either charged too much or was already retained by someone connected to Harold Winters. They were going to have to represent themselves in court against a man with unlimited resources and professional legal counsel. 2 days before they were set to leave for Cheyenne, Sarah Wells appeared at the ranch with a surprise. "This is my brother James," she said, introducing a young man in a slightly rumpled suit. "He's a lawyer in Denver. I told him about your situation." James Wells extended his hand to Clara. "Mrs. Parker, my sister says you're fighting for your family." "We are. And you're doing it without legal representation. We can't afford—" "I'm not asking for money." James's expression was serious. "My mother was a mail-order bride. She came west to a man she'd never met and built a life out of nothing but courage and determination. When she died, people tried to say my father couldn't raise us alone, that we should be separated and sent to relatives back east. But she'd taught him well, and he fought for us. Fought and won." He paused. I became a lawyer because of that fight, because I saw what happens when families have to face the system without help. So I'm offering my services. No charge." Clara felt tears spring to her eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because my sister says you're the kind of mother who'd move heaven and earth for her children, and because Harold Winters represents everything I hate about men who use money and power to crush people who can't fight back." James smiled slightly. "And because I'm very good at what I do, and I'd love the chance to destroy his case." Benjamin stepped forward. "We accept. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me after we win." James pulled out a notebook. "Now I need to know everything. Every detail about each child, how they came into your care, what your daily life looks like, any evidence of the children's well-being. And I need to know everything about Harold Winters, his business, his relationship with his sister, anything we can use to show that his motives aren't pure." They spent the next 2 days preparing. James interviewed each child, taking detailed notes on their experiences and feelings. He reviewed Marshall Dixon's report. He talked to every potential witness, preparing them for cross-examination. And he built a case that Clara began to believe might actually work. The morning they left for Cheyenne, the entire household was awake before dawn. Clara checked and rechecked their bags, making sure they had everything they needed. Clean clothes for the children. Documents proving their marriage and the children's situations. Letters of support from the community. Marshall Dixon's report. The children were unusually quiet as they loaded into the wagon. Even Mary seemed subdued, clutching her favorite doll and staying close to Ruth. The journey to Cheyenne took 2 full days of travel. They stopped at a way station the first night, cramming into 2 small rooms. Clara barely slept, her mind racing through everything that could go wrong. Through all the ways Harold might twist the truth. Through the possibility that she might return to Cedar Falls without her children. When they finally arrived in Cheyenne on the evening of the second day, Clara was exhausted and terrified. The territorial capital was larger than any town she'd seen since leaving Pennsylvania. Real buildings, paved streets, crowds of people. James had arranged rooms for them at a modest hotel. That evening, he came to their rooms for a final strategy session. "The hearing is tomorrow at 10 o'clock, he said. "Harold's lawyer will present his case first. He'll argue that as Margaret's brother, Harold has a stronger claim to the blood children than Clara does. He'll paint Clara as an opportunist who married Benjamin for convenience. He'll suggest that 7 children is too many and that the non-blood children should be in institutions." "How do we counter that?" Benjamin asked. "With truth, with emotion, with the testimony of the children themselves." James looked at Samuel, Ruth, and Elizabeth. "The judge will want to speak with you 3 especially. He'll ask you directly whether you want to live with your uncle or stay with your father and Clara. What will you say?" Samuel didn't hesitate. "I'll say, I want to stay home. Even though your uncle can offer you more material advantages, better education, connections. I don't care about any of that. I care about my family." Ruth nodded. "Same. I want to stay with Papa and Clara and my brothers and sisters." Elizabeth was crying, but her voice was firm. "If the judge tries to send me away, I'll run away and come home anyway." James smiled. "Good. That's exactly the kind of conviction we need. But remember, the judge might ask hard questions. He might try to confuse you or make you doubt yourselves. Stay calm. Tell the truth. And remember that no matter what you say, Clara and your father love you." That night, Clara lay in the unfamiliar hotel bed, listening to the children breathe in the adjoining room. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mary whimpering and Ruth softly comforting her. Could hear Timothy asking Samuel if everything would be okay. Could hear the twins whispering to each other in the darkness. Her children. All of them. Hers by choice and love, if not by blood. Tomorrow she would fight for them with everything she had. The courthouse was imposing, stone and wood, with high ceilings and solemn-faced officials. Clara held Mary on her hip as they entered, the other children clustered close. People stared as they passed, whispering. The woman with 7 children. The mail-order bride fighting for custody. The scandal of the season. Harold Winters was already there, dressed impeccably, his lawyer beside him. He looked at the children with cold assessment, as if calculating their potential value. Clara felt rage burn in her chest. She tightened her hold on Mary and lifted her chin. The judge, an older man named Harrison, entered, and everyone rose. He took his seat at the bench and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. This is a custody hearing in the matter of Harold Winters versus Benjamin and Clara Parker, he began. Mr. Winters is petitioning for custody of his deceased sister's children and requesting the removal of additional orphaned children from the Parker household. Mr. Winters, you may present your case. Harold's lawyer stood, a polished man in an expensive suit who spoke with practiced eloquence. He painted a picture of Harold as a grieving brother who only wanted what was best for his sister's children. A successful businessman who could provide opportunities the children would never have on a frontier ranch. A blood relative with a legal and moral right to raise them. Then he turned his attention to Clara. She was portrayed as an inexperienced woman who'd answered a newspaper advertisement out of desperation. Someone with no family ties to the community. Someone who'd been married to Benjamin for mere months, not enough time to truly bond with 7 traumatized children. Someone whose presence in the children's lives was causing distress, as evidenced by their behavioral changes after Harold's arrival. Furthermore, Your Honor, the lawyer concluded, the sheer number of children in the Parker household is unreasonable. 7 children cannot possibly receive adequate individual attention from 2 adults who are also trying to maintain a working ranch. The orphaned children, those with no blood ties to the Parkers, would be better served in proper institutions where they can receive specialized care. The lawyer sat down. Clara felt sick. Everything he'd said was technically true. She had answered an advertisement. She had been married only a few months. The children had shown distress. But the context was all wrong. The love was completely absent from his version of events. Judge Harrison turned to James. Mr. Wells, you may present your defense. James stood with quiet confidence. Your Honor, this case isn't about bloodlines or money or material advantages. It's about what's best for 7 children who have already suffered tremendous loss. Let me tell you who Clara Parker really is. For the next hour, James methodically dismantled Harold's case. He called Reverend Matthews, who testified about the family's regular church attendance and the visible bond between Clara and the children. He called Marshall Dixon, who read his report, stating that all 7 children were thriving in the Parker household. He called Mrs. Thornton, who spoke about Clara's dedication to the children and her integration into the community. Then he called the children themselves. Samuel went first. He was nervous but determined, his voice steady, as he told the judge about his life before and after Clara arrived. How the house had been chaos and grief before. How Clara had helped each of them heal without trying to replace their mother. How she'd given Ruth her childhood back and helped Elizabeth process her grief. Your Honor, Samuel said, my uncle didn't visit when my mother was dying. Didn't send condolences. Didn't care about us until he saw an opportunity. Clara came to us when we were broken and helped us become whole again. That's worth more than all the money and opportunities in the world. Ruth was next, crying through her testimony, but adamant that Clara was the mother they needed. Elizabeth said simply, I love her. She loves us. Please don't take us away from her. Then James made a bold move. Your Honor, I'd like to call the other children as well. Not just the blood children Mr. Winters claims to want, but all of them. Because this case isn't just about 3 children, it's about 7. Harold's lawyer objected. Those children are not at issue here, Your Honor. They have no blood relation to my client. But they have a family relation to the Parkers, James countered. And separating them from the blood children would destroy the family unit that has been built. Judge Harrison considered. I'll allow it, but keep it brief. The twins testified together, their small voices describing how Clara had helped them feel safe again after losing their parents. Timothy told the judge about how Clara taught him his numbers and held him when he had nightmares. And Mary, though she was too young to really testify, reached for Clara when the judge tried to speak to her, crying, "Mama!" over and over until Clara was allowed to hold her. Finally, James called Clara herself to the stand. "Mrs. Parker, why did you answer Benjamin's advertisement?" Clara took a breath. "Because I was lonely. Because I wanted a family. Because I was 26 years old and living in a room above a general store and felt like life was passing me by." "That's honest," James said. "Now tell me, when you arrived and discovered there were 7 children instead of 3, why didn't you leave?" "Because when I saw them standing on that porch, I saw what I'd been missing my whole life. I saw children who needed love, who needed stability, who needed someone to fight for them." Clara's voice strengthened. "I saw my purpose, my calling, my family." Even though you'd been deceived, because families aren't built on perfect circumstances. They're built on choice, on commitment, on love that persists even when things are hard. James nodded. "Mr. Winter's lawyer suggested that 7 children is too many. What do you say to that?" "I say 7 children is exactly the right number for our family. Yes, it's chaotic sometimes. Yes, I get overwhelmed. Yes, there are days I fall into bed exhausted wondering if I'm doing anything right. But then I wake up, and Mary says, 'Mama,' and Timothy shows me he can count to 20, and Elizabeth shows me a new drawing, and Ruth makes bread without being asked, and the twins laugh together, and Samuel calls me Clara instead of Mrs. Parker, and I know that this is exactly where I'm meant to be." There were tears in the courtroom. Clara could see several people dabbing at their eyes. Then Harold's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Parker, you've been married how long?" 3 months. 3 months. And in that time you've experienced what you described as overwhelming days. Days where you question if you're doing anything right. Days where you're exhausted." He paused. "Doesn't that suggest that perhaps 7 children is more than you can handle?" "No," Clara said firmly. "It suggests that parenting is hard, that loving people is hard, that building a family takes work. But hard doesn't mean impossible, and exhaustion doesn't mean failure." "But wouldn't these children be better off in situations where they weren't just one of 7? Where they could receive individual attention?" "They do receive individual attention, every single day. I know Timothy's favorite color, and Matthew's fear of thunderstorms, and Elizabeth's love of drawing birds. I know Ruth worries about disappointing people, and Samuel carries too much responsibility on his shoulders, and Michael wants to be a rancher like his father, and Mary's favorite word is cookie." Clara leaned forward. "Those children aren't just numbers to me. They're individuals whom I love as individuals, and they know it." Harold's lawyer tried several more angles, but Clara held firm. Finally, he sat down. Judge Harrison looked at Harold. "Mr. Winters, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why do you want custody of these children?" Harold stood. "Your Honor, these are my sister's children, my blood. I have a responsibility to ensure they're raised properly with advantages I can provide that a simple rancher cannot. Good schools, social connections, financial security. And what about the other children, the orphans? They should be in institutions designed to care for orphans. The Parkers cannot adequately provide for 7 children." "Why not?" Harold hesitated. "It's simply too many. The strain is evident. The strain of what Marshall Dixon's report says, they're thriving. Multiple witnesses have testified to their well-being. The children themselves say they want to stay. So I'll ask again, why shouldn't they stay with the Parkers?" Harold's mask slipped slightly. "Because she's not their mother. She's a stranger who married their father out of desperation. Those children deserve better. Better than being loved." Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. "Better than having a home and siblings and parents who are fighting with everything they have to keep them better than the family they've built. Better than—" Harold stopped. "Your Honor, I can provide financially." "I'm not asking about finances, Mr. Winters. I'm asking about love. I'm asking about whether you're truly doing this for the children's benefit or for your own." The judge leaned forward. "I've reviewed your business dealings, Mr. Winters. I know about your textile mills, I know about the children you employ children as young as 7 working 12-hour days. Is that what you envision for these orphans? Free labor? Harold's lawyer started to object, but Harold held up a hand. Your Honor, my business practices are not on trial here. No, but your motives are. And frankly, Mr. Winters, I don't believe you care about these children at all. I think you saw an opportunity to acquire workers and perhaps punish your brother-in-law for remarrying. I think your sudden concern for your sister's children is convenient and calculated. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Clara felt hope surge in her chest for the first time. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. I'm ready to render my decision. The room fell silent. Clara reached for Benjamin's hand, squeezing so hard her knuckles went white. The children huddled close, fear written on every face. Having reviewed all testimony and evidence, Judge Harrison began. I find that the Parker household is not only suitable for all 7 children, but is in fact the best possible placement for them. The children are thriving academically, emotionally, and physically. They are loved and cared for. They have stated clearly their desire to remain with Benjamin and Clara Parker. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Furthermore, the judge continued, I find Mr. Winters' petition to be without merit and his motives to be questionable at best. His claim to custody based on blood relation is superseded by the children's best interests, which are clearly served by remaining in their current home. Harold's face went red with fury. Therefore, I am denying Mr. Winters' petition in its entirety. Full custody of Samuel Parker, Ruth Parker, and Elizabeth Parker remains with their father, Benjamin Parker, and his wife, Clara Parker. Additionally, I am granting the Parkers formal legal adoption of Timothy Jameson, Michael Crawford, Matthew Crawford, and Mary Doe, making them Parkers in law as they already are in their hearts. The judge banged his gavel. This hearing is concluded. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Ruth burst into tears. Samuel let out a whoop. The twins started jumping. Timothy grabbed Clara's legs. Elizabeth hugged Benjamin. And Mary, not understanding but feeling the joy, clapped her hands and shouted, Mama! Clara sank into a chair, overwhelmed. They'd won. They'd actually won. James was shaking Benjamin's hand, grinning widely. The witnesses were congratulating them. People Clara had never met were coming up to offer their support. And Harold Winters stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer hurrying after him, defeated and furious. But Clara barely noticed. She was surrounded by her children, all 7 of them, who were laughing and crying and holding on to her like they'd never let go. We get to stay together, Timothy asked, his voice full of wonder. Yes, baby, we all get to stay together. Forever. Forever. That night back at the hotel, after the children were finally asleep, exhausted from emotion and relief, Clara stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Cheyenne. Benjamin came to stand beside her. We did it, he said softly. We did. Clara, I need you to know something. He turned her to face him. When I wrote that advertisement, I was looking for help. Someone to cook and clean and take care of the children. I thought that's all I needed, practical help. I know. But what I got was so much more. I got a partner, a fighter, a woman who loves my children as fiercely as their own mother did, a woman who stood in a courtroom and fought for our family like a lioness protecting her cubs. His voice broke. I got you, and that's the greatest gift I've ever received. Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. I came west looking for a purpose, for a family, for a place to belong. Did you find it? She thought about 7 children sleeping peacefully in the next room, no longer afraid of being torn apart. Thought about the ranch waiting for them back in Cedar Falls. Thought about the community that had rallied around them. Thought about the life they'd built together in just 3 short months. Yes, she said. I found it. They stood together at the window, husband and wife parents of 7, looking out at the future that now stretched before them, uncertain in many ways, but certain in the one way that mattered most. They were a family, not by blood, not by convenience, but by choice and love, and the determination to fight for each other no matter what. Clara had come west as a lonely schoolteacher, answering a desperate man's advertisement. She'd been lied to, tested, challenged, and threatened. But she'd also been welcomed, needed, loved, and claimed by 7 children who needed her as much as she needed them. And in the end, that made all the difference. The mail-order bride had become a mother. The stranger had become family. The uncertain future had become home. And nothing, not Harold Winters, not the courts, not distance or difficulty or doubt, could ever take that away. Because family wasn't about blood or law or circumstance. Family was about who showed up when things got hard and chose to stay anyway. Family was about love that persisted through fear and fought through obstacles and refused to surrender. Family was 7 children and 2 adults in a ranch house in Wyoming, building something beautiful out of broken pieces. And Clara Parker, formerly Clara Whitmore, lonely schoolteacher from Pennsylvania, had finally found exactly where she belonged. She'd found her purpose. She'd found her people. She'd found her home. And she was never ever letting go.